strategist, and keynote speaker who helps professionals turn experience into equity. As managing partner of Gertzberg Licata, he guides entrepreneurs through high stakes transitions from litigation and risk prevention to succession planning and practice exits. A former general counsel, U.S. Army veteran, and creator of the nationally used Cover My Six system, Alex brings a rare blend of legal insight, entrepreneurial strategy, and human centered leadership to everything he does, whether advising business owners or inspiring audiences to find purpose and perspective in their work. It's always a pleasure working with you, Alex. Happy to turn it over to you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dominica. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Uh, so, folks, um, I'm going to start today with a vision exercise. Okay, so I'm a big fan of the theory that um, all really great progress in life and business starts with asking good questions. I think your brain automatically starts answering a good question, uh, whether you direct it to or not. And so I love a good question. So I'm going to ask you all, and I'd love to see your answers. So put this into the chat. Okay. So close your eyes if that's what will help you time travel with me. But I want you to imagine that it is the week after you have handed your business off, you have transitioned away. Maybe that's retirement. Maybe that is your, uh, um, wind down, whatever that trigger is for when you are walking away from your current existence in your law firm to your future existence, right? It's the week after that, and you and I are having lunch. So, my first question to you is, where are we having lunch, right? Is it in the Marble Room? Is it in Hawaii? Put it in the chat. Where are we eating? Okay. And the conversation we're having, I always love seeing who's brave to be the first person to put Blue Point. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. That's a great restaurant. Johnny's. Okay. We're staying local. Majorca, the restaurant or the city? Good stuff. Ooh, Northern Ireland. Love it. We're sitting across the table from each other eating lunch. And the conversation we have goes like this. You are saying to me, Alex, I'm in a great place today. I'm in a great place. And I want you to think about what you're going to explain to me. Why are you in a great place today? What has happened over the last year, if it's a year from now, or if wherever that point in time is between now and then, what has to have happened for you personally and professionally for you to say, Alex, I love where I'm at today. Okay. McDonald's, that's funny. So think about that, folks, because that moment in time and us working backwards from there is going to help us build the strategy that we're going to talk about today. Okay. So, what has to have happened? Thank you, Aaron. Seamless transition for clients. Love it. Love it. I'm going to give you some concepts to think about as you answer this question. Okay. Alex, I'm in a great place today. Here's how I'm spending my time. Here's what my financial situation looks like. This is my life's purpose, and here's how I'm pursuing it. Okay. I'd love to see what some of you guys are thinking about that. How are you in that great place in these areas? And by the way, here's how I've protected my clients. Here's what they're doing now. Here's how I'm helping them or have helped them. And oh, by the way, to the extent these things are important to you, here's what I've done to preserve my legacy, my reputation, brand, family wealth. Any thoughts, folks? Any ideas? Alex, I'm in a great place today because, well, as you think about that, as you think about those answers, and I'm planting the seed here very intentionally, right? Because we're going to keep talking about that, and we're going to keep returning to these questions, um, and we're going to pursue these goals for the next hour. Okay, when we're all done here, you are either going to walk out with a lot of value, practical value, not theoretical, practical value and action steps. And you're going to have a lot more clarity and a lot more confidence about how to get from where you are today to that point in time. And if you don't have that value and that clarity and confidence, then you're going to email me or call me and say, Alex, you did not deliver on your goals. Okay. And I intend to deliver. Okay, but that's what we're going to do today. That's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to do so in these ways. We're going to talk about succession planning, about the different ways to transition, how that looks logistically. I'm going to teach you how we work with our clients at Exit Path on creating revenue streams post retirement, sometimes for the rest of their lives. We're going to talk about Ohio Rule 1.17, and I'm going to try to leave time for Q&A at the end. Emphasis on try. As Dominica said, go ahead and put questions in here as you go. And if my ADD does not prevent me from, or my OCD maybe, prevent me from looking at your questions as we go, I'm going to try to answer them at the end. I'm going to try to stick around afterwards beyond the hour for more questions. But anyway, that's our agenda, folks. Okay. Here's me. Um, so Lou Licata and I are co-owners and co-managing partners of Gertzberg Licata. You're going to hear a little bit more about our story as we go. Um, I've been a lawyer for 26 years, but really haven't been practicing the last several. Um, I started my firm originally in 2012, and shortly thereafter added some businesses adjacent to the firm, recruiting and strategic growth for our clients, M&A, and business brokering. And so the business brokering has morphed into a law firm focused kind of brokering. And that's what Exit Path does. We help lawyers and law firms exit from their firms, and we help other law firms grow through acquisitions. We do recruiting for them. We're a full service intermediary for law firms. Um, uh, did some time in the Army, spent some time in Iraq in there, and I serve on a couple of boards. I love working with entrepreneurs. So that's me. Also, as Dominica mentioned, Lou and I wrote this great book called The Lawsuit Free Company. We've got a system called Cover My Six. Fun fact, fun fact, you can impress all your friends at parties with. There are only six plaintiffs who can sue a business. And so it's customers, vendors, employees, shareholders, the government, and competitors. Those are your six primary plaintiffs. Everything else goes into those six. And if you know who can sue a business, then you can reverse engineer what they can sue you for and how to prevent those. And so that's what Cover My Six is. It's this legal audit system that we created for our business clients. And so, folks, let's start here. Okay, let's start here. So, I started doing business coaching as the person being coached with a guy named Dan Sullivan. I don't. He's got a lot of books. I think he's the best business coach on the planet. And I started working with him 8 years ago. And the very first day of strategic coach, the question was, why did you become an entrepreneur? And what I quickly learned, for those of you who own your own firms or own your own practices inside of other firms, but basically are entrepreneurs, is when you ask an entrepreneur why they became an entrepreneur, fundamentally it was always about freedom. It was always about freedom. It's true for every entrepreneur I've ever met. We don't like people telling us how we should spend our time, how much money we can make, who we should take on as clients or employees or partners. We want to do our own thing, right? And so as we have evolved exit path partners, and as I have with my team worked with entrepreneurs for 25 years now, I see that time and time again. What we do when we grow our businesses is we create assets. And when we are converting those assets into something else, whether it's cash, whether it's time to go to the islands, we're converting those assets into our freedoms. And the five basic freedoms are right there on the right. It's freedom of time, money, relationships, purpose, and health. And so when you're exiting, that is the ultimate transformation of these assets that we have spent 20, 30, 40 years accumulating, building, scaling, evolving. When we retire or exit from our business, that is the ultimate transformation of asset into freedom. And so when Exit Path works with retirees, that's what we are doing. And when I ask you, where do you see yourself a week after your exit? The conversation we're having is around those freedoms and the events of the prior year or 2 or 3 years have really been about transforming those assets into those freedoms. That is the mindset, that is the framework that I want you to deploy and apply through this entire conversation, through this entire process. Okay. And so the best example I can think of is my own personal story. So 20, started out doing business litigation at Retzel and then at Calfee. And then in 2006, I became a general counsel for a telecom company called Broadvox. And shortly thereafter, I started my own firm. And when I started my firm, it was just me. And then it became me and a couple lawyers. Then eventually there were about 17 of us. And I was the senior lawyer in my firm. And that's a problem, right? That's a problem for me anyway, because it's a particular problem where I'm substantially more senior than everyone else there, and that was the case. I had a great bench of junior lawyers and support staff, but I was on every matter, and I was the primary rainmaker, and so my clients expected to see me. When they came into the office and when they brought a problem to us. And so I was burning out. I was burning out 6.5 days a week at the desk, and my family life suffered. And there was definitely just a giant disparity between work life and joy of life, right? And so then I met Lou in this would have been around 2021. Okay. And Lou and no, that's not true. I think it was like 2019. And Lou and I are both an entrepreneurs organization. And Lou had the opposite problem. He had great senior lawyers and not a lot of good junior lawyers. Okay. Hardly any junior lawyers. And so he had the opposite problem in the sense that he had a lot of really talented senior lawyers who were doing everything on all their cases. Even the things that they shouldn't be doing, the things that junior lawyers should be doing. So we started working together and we dated professionally, right, for about a year. And about a year in, we looked at each other and we said, hey, why don't we merge our firms? And he and I are both deal lawyers at this point, right? We're both doing a lot of M&A. And so we, inside of a 90-day period, breakneck speed, went from that conversation to an LOI to all the diligence that we needed to do to definitive agreements. We found a building to move into. We financed the building. We closed on everything all inside of a 90-day period. And we did it because we figured out how to get total alignment on culture, on vision. I'm going to show you in a little bit the tool that we created and that we now use both at Gertzberg Licata and at Exit Path to accelerate mergers. I'm going to share that with you. And we became a force, and it was all done really, aside from quickly, just really methodically. Okay. And it created a lot of freedom for both of us and for our people. And that was our story. And as you can tell, Lou and I are a little bit different in age. And so that became the template, not just for Lou and me, but for other attorneys who came into our universe, okay, and became members of our firm. Changed the name here, right? But true story, true story. So this is at my firm before I merged with Lou. Lawyer came to me. We're going to call him Bart, 70 years old, pushing 70. Came from a large law firm. He and I knew each other, and he said to me, Alex, I cannot retire at the firm I'm at. I've been there for 30, 40, like 35 years now. They don't even see me over there when I'm walking down the halls. I get no respect. I can't, I can barely get my expenses, my reimbursement requests approved. I've got a good book of business, but I just don't feel good there. I don't want to go to work there. It's just not a great environment for me. And I said, Bart, why don't you join my firm as of counsel? Join my firm as of counsel. I've got a team here who can service your clients. We will pay you origination now and post retirement, and we will take care of your clients. And so we absorbed his book into the Gertzberg law firm, and he joined the firm as of counsel. And we took great care of his clients, and we continued paying him as a percentage of the receipts. And that also became a great template for future deals. The methodology for which I'm going to share with you here. I don't know how many of you resonate with either of these two stories, but I'm guessing, and hopefully it's more the first story than the second story, but I'm guessing that one or both of these stories lands with a lot of you. Statistically, this probably applies to some or all of you here, folks. So, statistically, a minority of solo and small firm lawyers actually plan their exits methodically and strategically. Those that don't, which is the majority, that translates to regret. Within a year of the transition, they wish they would have done better planning earlier. A majority of them wish they started planning much sooner, and half of all lawyers today who are planning their retirement expect to work past the age of 65 purely for financial reasons, right? So planning and strategy, they obviously matter in this part of your life, and the more strategy and the more planning you do, the better. So what gets in the way? Why do transitions fail? So my experience in working with exiting lawyers, whether because they're retiring or because they're like me and they just don't want to practice law anymore, they want to do other things, the failure points are generally these, and these also track statistically with survey data about why transitions fail. The first is lack of imagination. Many of you have been doing one or two or three things inside of your practice and doing them really well, but generally not thinking about all of the different ways that you can sell or wind down or transition your practice. It's just not what you do, right? So many of our clients at Exit Path come in and they've been writing wills for 40 years, or just doing patent prosecution that whole time. This does not come naturally to many of us. So just a lack of imagination of knowing what the options are. The second biggest reason is doing it by yourself. You're going to hear me say over and over again, work with an army. This is an important, critical part of your professional journey. And I'm going to give you the members of your army that are absolutely required. The third is, if those that do transition their clients do it in a really sloppy way, and the clients leave or just stay dormant. And so that is a very important part of a good transition. The fourth is a poor monetization strategy. There's ways to secure both the valuation and the liquidity and the post-retirement payout for your transition. And then lastly, it's just not having a good plan. And it's not just knowing the good plan in your head, it's writing it down. So folks, Dominica has either already made this available to you, or you're learning about it here. There's a QR code at the end, but I'm going to share this document with you. It is our own. This is how we work. Thanks, Dominica. Yeah. So you guys have this already. If you just work through these questions, folks, you will go a long way to creating that plan, so just go through these. These are the members of that army that you absolutely must have on your team. Okay. As part of it, and start talking to these folks early. Okay. Insurance, lenders, financial advisors, all these folks need to be on your team as part of your transition. Dominica, remind me, is this 1 hour or 90 minutes? This presentation, I think it's an hour, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go through a lot of this kind of quickly, folks, so that we can end on time. But like I said, I'll stay on afterwards with questions. Okay. So work through this workbook, folks, and you're going to go a long way to not being in that 74% of lawyers who transition and then regret it. Okay. All right. So what happens between now and that day if something unexpected happens? That's the very first and most important question that everybody should really be thinking about, right? Because you can have a thriving, valuable, high valuation practice or book of business or law firm, and God forbid something happens between now and then. If you don't have a really good interim succession plan, like a triage plan, your valuation just went right downhill, rolled right downhill. So what does that look like? Making sure that at least in the short term, if something were to happen, who is going to manage your firm? And then as you develop your succession plan, it's who's going to manage it in the short term, and then how do we hand it off and to whom in the long term? You want to empower that person with everything they're going to need to run your firm in the interim. And it's this checklist of documents right here. Guys, this does not have to be that complicated. I'm going to show you our succession plan document. Okay. This is the Gertzberg-Licata succession plan, right? It's 2 pages. It's 2 pages, right? And then there's a signature page at the end. And then down here, the schedules, that is where all of that's what you are handing over to the successor, accounts, key clients, things like that, passwords, credentials, to allow them to keep running your firm. Guys, it could be a trustee. It could be somebody internal, but it has to be somebody that will keep the lights on and keep the plates spinning and keep the clients happy. Okay. Right now, we're working with a law firm in California, and it is a very niche firm with a very niche practice. All of their clients are um, like Hollywood production studios. Okay. And the owner, and it was you know, an elderly solo lawyer with a fantastic paralegal, dies suddenly and didn't have a succession plan at all. And fortunately, had a lot of really good friends and colleagues who stepped in to do the work so that his wife, his widow, can realize the value of his life's work. And so that they can take that asset and transition it to a new acquiring firm before all the clients left. Okay. So that's a cautionary tale. That firm and that deceased attorney, extremely lucky that they had the friends with the know-how to step in and just keep working. If he didn't, um, which is very possible given how niche this practice is, his widow, all the clients leave and his widow doesn't inherit. So that's the succession plan, and that's really important. So, folks, let's get into the meat here. Right? There's five main ways that you can transition your practice. You can sell it. You can hand it off to somebody internally. You can wind it down. You can shut it down quickly. Or my favorite, and this is what we're going to spend the most time on, and this is really the way that Exit Path does it: merge, monetize, and multiply, or as my daughter calls it, mm. Okay. And so, how do you choose which of those methods is best for you? Well, this is where we get back to your original question, right? This is where we go back to that future date where we're sitting across from each other at, Mallorca. And you're explaining to me why it's been a great year, why your life is perfect. That vision informs which of these types of transition make the most sense. Why? Why is that the case? Well, and then these were the other questions, right? The reason is that each of these transition methodologies have different risks, different burdens, different opportunities, and create different kinds of um, freedoms, objectives, results, outcomes. Okay. So selling it, um, the risk of is entirely based on what kind of deal you can negotiate. Okay. The burden on an outright sale is typically higher than the other ones. Lots of diligence, lots of documentation, lots of ethical requirements that we're going to get to later to talk about. And the opportunity is, again, it's mostly deal dependent, but there's usually a cap. Okay. Um, Handing it off to somebody internally, your risk is reduced, but it's still there, right? Um, Lower burden, but still some, and opportunity moderate. The lowest risk, lowest burden, and lowest opportunity types of transition. I mean, it's just winding it or shutting it down, right? If you don't want to do anything and you're just done, and this, by the way, is how uh, um, this is the default for many, if not most, law firms is, hey, I'm just going to send a letter to my clients and say, hey guys, 30 days from now, I'm out. It's been great. Here's a couple names. Low risk, low burden, low opportunity. We believe that your best option, if you want to maximize the opportunity, is this merge, monetize, and multiply methodology that I'm going to teach you. Okay. It generally is the same risk profile as a sale. There's still some burden. There's still some burden. There's no way around that. The way to mitigate that is with a good team, but it is the highest opportunity. Um, so again, each of those has different outcomes. If you want to just get out and maximize your time, well, sell it or just get out of the business entirely, right? Well, you're going to have very few obligations after that. Okay. Again, uh, you can have the most control with the internal succession or by shutting down your business. And again, the merge, monetize, and multiply method is, in my opinion, where you get the most freedom and the most upside, and you retain a lot of control. So, um, generally, statistically, the value of a firm increases by 15 to 25% if you are structuring a merger or an internal succession rather than just selling, just a straight sale. Okay, a straight sale where you're walking away. Um, so there's that. And then, folks, I told you earlier already, this is your advisory board, and these folks are ones that you are going to be talking to not only about what transition method is great for you, but also how to structure it from a tax standpoint and how to document it from a legal standpoint. Even those of you who are M&A lawyers here, it's the same rule, right? About the fool for a client. You still want a separate deal lawyer advising you and documenting your deal. Um, Pretty self-explanatory here, folks. If you are going to go alone, if you are going to do it yourself, and this is what you're committed to doing, then do these 5 things, and you will increase the chance of a successful transition. Right? You're here. We're thinking about it. So starting early is key. You're going to learn a little bit about who the optimal successor is for your business. We're going to get to that in a few seconds. Um, Guys, just maintaining those client relationships right up until the end is absolutely critical. And knowing which ones are going to keep the phone ringing post retirement for whoever your successor is, and then optimizing for those transitions, those relationships is critical. Having a good transition plan we've talked about, and then strategic communication to the right employees, to the right clients at the right time is critical. So timing those things. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. How do I move this slide? All right. So some of you are thinking, okay, well, what's my practice worth? Well, let's talk about it. So, as a general matter, how you assign a value to an asset or a business usually falls into one of these 4 categories if you're not a law firm, right? Rule of thumb, right? What's the multiple of EBITDA or revenue that we're talking about? Comps, that's big with real estate. What do firms like mine generally trade at? Discounted cash flow method. Well, at some future point in time, the buyer is going to realize X dollars out of this firm. So we're going to discount it for present value by X, by Y. And then an asset-based method typically applies if you're just selling like hard assets. So very common in manufacturing companies. What we're talking about with professional services firms is really kind of a combination of the rule of thumb and the market comp method, and it's mostly the rule of thumb. So we're going to talk about valuation drivers, what makes the multiple go up or down, and then what that multiple is. Here are the things that the buyer looks at mostly when they think about your firm and assigning a value to it. And these are the things that move the valuation up or down. And in particular, These three things are generally the most important. The acquisition of another business always carries risk. The buyer wants to know, what is my ROI, my return on investment? And they calculate that ROI by looking at your financials today and by extrapolating them out 1, 2, 5 years based on growth strategies. And then when they drill in, they look at how confident they can be in your revenue. How much of it is recurring? Are there subscription services? How reliable are the fee structures in terms of translating into reliable revenue? Financial buyers that are mostly interested in that financial ROI, those are the things that they look for. Now, these other things are also important and drive value up. If you've got unique processes, internal intellectual property, trade secrets, things that you do that nobody else does, um, drives up. Brand identity, you know who's got great brand identity is Tim Misney, right? Everybody knows who he is. He doesn't even have to put words up, right, on his billboard. He just has to put his eye on a billboard, doing his thing, and everybody knows who he is. He's got brand identity. He's going to be able to have a good valuation or a higher valuation just based on all the investment he's made in his brand. Um, these other things are pretty self-explanatory, but these are the things that move your valuation up or down for the buyer. I'm going to show you two slides here, folks, that inform your understanding of valuations, but I need you to understand that these numbers come from law firm transactions that are made public in some way. And you know what? Very few of them are. Very few law firm financial details from a transaction are actually shared with the public. So Biz Buy Sell and the Law Practice Exchange and the ABA, they take whatever they know and then they put them together and they come up with numbers like this. And then they also inform them with other professional services, which, so accounting firms, insurance agencies, but they're not law firms. So I'm going to share this with you. You just have to know that your firm is going to have its own valuation process, okay? But as a general matter, those of you who are in solo or small firms, if you can get anything around 50% of gross revenue for your firm, if you're selling it outright, right? So that's a good day. That's a good day, right? So the 1 to 5 attorney should actually be 2 to 5 attorneys, right? Because your solo's at the top. More than 50% of gross revenue. Okay. And then SD's sellers discretionary earnings. So if you take all of the W-2 salary that you take plus any personal expenses that you run through the business, like travel, entertainment, your car, things like that, plus profit. Those three things put together are sellers discretionary earnings. And so those multiples, right, in that second column will also be a good benchmark based on the size of your firm. And then in the far right column are the median sale prices of firms that reported into this database. So use these benchmarks to give you an idea of what your firm might be worth. And then over here on the right are just some generally directionally accurate concepts, right? PI firms tend to trade a little bit higher, but it really depends on what their pipeline is coming in. Estate planning firms, pretty average, right? 1/2 to 1 times gross, really based a lot on recurring client relationships, right? Business firms trade pretty well. Family law firms, I mean, average, right? Immigration firms average, and general practice pretty average. Okay. Um, and then this is important because so many firms think that when they sell, they're going to get a large check up front in cash. If you're retiring and you've got a small firm, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably, if you can get any cash up front, that's a great day. Okay. But um, 75 to 85% of deals for law firms are pay as you go, right? Payouts over time in some structure. Um, whether it's seller financing or earnout or a hybrid, the vast majority of law firms' sales are that way. Which ones are all cash? Well, number one, lower valuations because there's more risk. And it's generally where there are some other variables, right? IP, brand recognition, recurring revenue, subscription services, things like that. A firm comes in, writes a check because they know they're going to get repeating revenue and, in a confident way. And the um, thing about retirees, folks, this is just a reality, right? If I'm acquiring a firm that really depends on one or a few people, and one or more of those people is retiring, is sailing off into the sunset, well, I need that person for a little while to make sure that the clients transition. And I really don't know how much those clients are going to work with me if that lawyer has retired. So I'm not going to want to write a giant check up front. I'm going to want to maintain some uh, um, confidence that the clients are going to transition over. And that's why payouts over time is the norm with retirees and with solos. Let me see. So, what years do you take into consideration this type of analysis? So, the average of the trailing 3 years is a very common way, William. Um, Sometimes they weigh the last year the most because it's the closest. But as a general matter, the buyer will want 3 years of tax returns. Okay. Um, and Aaron, you asked a question about when the homework should start. Um, yeah, follow your instincts right now. Right now. I generally think that you can't start too early. Okay. Okay. Let's keep going. So this is kind of new. Private equity is buying up law firms more and more every year. I've been doing this presentation for a few years now. This is a pretty new slide. So, Arizona, Utah, Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., they all are saying, hey, you don't have to be a lawyer to own a law firm. Lots of reasons for that, right? Private equity wants to own them, accounting firms want to own them, investors in general. And they've found ways to maintain ethical standards with non lawyers. The most common way that private equity comes in, by the way, is through this management service organization. And they do that in the states where they don't allow non lawyers to own the firms, right? So, in other words, everywhere, this is a trend that is spreading everywhere. And so, how that applies to you is if you are a firm with a couple $1 million in revenue and a substantial EBITDA or seller's discretionary earnings, PE is going to want to talk to you, and that gives you a lot more options. Okay, they come in if in states where they can't own the firm, they basically set up a back office for the firm, and they take over a lot of the operations, and they pay themselves through management fees. Um, this is a whole presentation onto itself. But for now, just know that this is a player, this is a buyer, and that creates strategic options and considerations for you that did not exist several years ago. Okay. All right. So The next couple slides are going to be kind of boring for those of you that do deals a lot, but you know, maybe you'll learn something anyway. All right. So those of you who are selling your firm are going to probably go through all of these processes. And those of you who are not selling are going to still go through a bunch of them, but in different ways. So start with a non-disclosure agreement in Ohio that's actually required as part of Rule 1.17 before you share anything about your clients. You're going to put all your business terms into a term sheet. Those are the things that you don't want to argue about later. You're then going to start negotiating the definitive purchase agreement or the of counsel agreement. That's where you're going to put in, all of the other terms, your um, what is transferring over, what is being left behind, is this a stock purchase, is this an asset purchase? You're going to work with an M&A lawyer for that. Simultaneously, you're going to be doing your diligence into each other. You're going to be learning a lot about each other for several months. That diligence translates into exhibits and representations and warranties in the purchase agreement, which is why steps 3 and 4 and 5 actually happen simultaneously. You're also creating these ancillary documents that get signed at the same time. And then you close, and then post closing is actually still a phase because that's where you're going to get paid. That's where reporting is going to happen. That's where you're going to be doing joint marketing. Folks, this is a tool that we've created, and I'm going to actually see if I can share the full one here with you. Let me see, because this is a really, and this too is one that you can download. Okay. The process of a merger is like building a real estate development or a home or whatever, right? It's a project with a lot of moving parts. So this is called a Gantt chart. Lou and I started, well, Lou and I each had our own Gantt charts for the M&A deals that we were doing. And then this became one that we evolved over time to map out all the steps in a purchase of other firms. And this is now what we use at Exit Path. We've evolved it further. But basically, how it works is all the tasks in a deal all are here, and they get generally put into these categories, right? You've got your vision, you've got the people, you've got uh, you know, comp, benefits. Here's your corporate law stuff, marketing, technology, financial, okay, IOLTA stuff. So it's all here, and there's a lot of steps here. And this is where you're going to assign some other person or yourself to each task. This is where you maintain progress. You put right up front. When is this task going to start? When is it going to end? As you go, you put notes here. Outcome is here. This deal is only done when everything in the progress bar is either marked done or not applicable. And then in outcome is how that ends up. And then this is why I really love this is why we adopted sort of the general contractor model for this, right? So when a GC puts a construction plan together, they do it visually. So this step takes here, this one's here, and they're able to see what the relationship is among the tasks. Okay. This is what we use at Exit Path. And this is just a really great tool to use, and you can have it. Okay. And then there's some other tabs here, right? So vision notes, this is where you sit across the table from your successor and you say, okay, here's my vision, here's their vision, here's the concerns, here's where they align. And then these are just different questions that you ask each other, right? And then this is where you decide, okay, which vendor are we keeping? Here's mine, here's theirs. I like my accountant. I like his insurance guy. You know what I mean? So you process that out. This is just a really great tool that we've learned to rely on over the years, and you can have it. Yes, you can have that in Excel. Any other additional forms, outlines for a PI firm? Not really, just these two. These are agnostic to the type of firm it is. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. Okay. Um, hopefully you see this. All right. So now let's talk about my favorite way to transition, and it's the merge, monetize, and multiply. Okay. So quick side note here, folks. People who don't retire live longer. And I don't mean like you have to keep working forever. This is one of my favorite books because it's like the fountain of youth. You know, National Geographic reporter goes around the world and finds the 5 cities where the average life expectancy is higher than everywhere else. He finds 5. Half of the people in all of these cities live past 100. They don't even have a word for retirement in most of these cities. People don't retire. They just find the thing that they loved to do in their career and they just focus on that thing. And maybe it's, you know, the occasional mentoring that they do. Maybe it's client relationships. Maybe they still will write an occasional document or whatever. You know, obviously we're talking about lawyers here. But the point is, just because in America we think that there's this magical age of 65 and because retirement is part of our culture, it just doesn't necessarily mean what we think it does. Okay. Personally, I don't ever plan on retiring. I love what I do. I love helping entrepreneurs. I love mentoring entrepreneurs. So I'm going to do that for the rest of my life in some form. Okay. And so part of this methodology assumes that there are things that you're going to want to keep doing. And that's where we go back to, all right, what does that day look like a week after your transition? Okay. So the advantages are that you can maintain revenue well past retirement. You maintain control over the transition reasonably well. Number 3 is my favorite one. The growth opportunities are huge because the things that you're doing for your clients today, the firm that they go to can do a lot more for those clients than you do today. And then you're creating wins for yourself, for your clients, and for the new firm. The disadvantages are the same as in any other deal, right? You don't have a crystal ball, you can't predict the future, and you mitigate that by working with professionals who can help you identify blind spots and give you advice, and you do diligence and you time it well, and you get really, really confident with the person that you are transitioning to. Okay, this is the methodology. We came up with a great acronym. It's WIN today. Folks, if it sounds like I'm talking faster, trust your instincts. I am. I'm going to try to get through the rest of this in the next 6 minutes. So work with an intermediary. Why? Because you can't be objective. You just can't. You're a human being. I'm a human being. You have an emotional attachment to your business just like everybody else. You will either undervalue it or overvalue it. You also probably never sold a law firm, most of you. And so there is reach, there is capability, there are options that an intermediary can give you. They are skilled. There's confidentiality that they can give you that you can't get when you introduce yourself to somebody. And they've got the experience. So please work with an intermediary. It doesn't have to be Exit Path. Call me. I will give you any number of good intermediaries out there, but work with somebody. Identifying potential acquirers really comes down, in my mind, to 4 key components. Who do you trust? And I mean really trust to help to maintain your clients and keep them happy. Who is most capable of doing it? Who has the culture that you need? And who has the reach that you need? Meaning, your reach is you're able to do some amount of marketing, some amount of client acquisition strategy. These guys might have a much bigger reach. They can grow your book beyond what it already is. Okay. Step 3, you're going to get an NDA signed. Obvious reasons. Step 4, you're going to start working through the terms of the deal. How much are you going to be getting paid? When are you going to get paid? What does reporting look like? What is each side's responsibilities? What does marketing look like? And on and on. Next, you're going to do the diligence. You're going to create a plan. not just through the closing, but post closing, who is doing what and when, and what are the announcements going to look like. You're going to work with their marketing department. Step 6, you're going to close, you're going to tell the world. Um, you will have already communicated with key stakeholders before this. Step 7 is alignment. And by that, I mean you are now hand in glove working with your successor on business development, on marketing, on engagement, on transition, on handoff. I'm going to take a really quick detour here. Okay. Really quick detour. Marketing and business development are my favorite aspects of a business and of the practice of law, and the business of law. Okay, these 4 things help me make rain, not just for our firm, but for Exit Paths clients. Right. Number one, where did your largest checks come from? That becomes your key constituencies, your top uh, uh, focal point, right? Not just who wrote your largest checks, but who referred them to you and what did you do for them? What were your profits on them? Those are your largest checks. 2, you're going to organize them into lists. 3, you're going to meet with the key members of that top. Oh, by the way, top 20 means those are your 20 largest checks. The farm club are the folks who you want to be in your top 20 in the future. Okay. These concepts, by the way, are all things I learned from my business coach, Dan Sullivan. So nothing new. I don't own this stuff. This is all Dan stuff. And this has worked for me phenomenally over the years. Okay. 3, you're going to meet with all of them, those key clients and referral sources. And you know what you're going to do, folks? You're going to ask them the same questions that I asked you at the beginning to understand their goals. Hey, so and so, if you and I are here a year from now, what has to have happened for you to say, hey, Alex, it's been a great year? That helps you understand their goals and break it up into time, money, relationships, and purpose. That really helps you understand their goals. And then your job is to help them achieve their goals. And specifically, you help them by solving their DOS: dangers, opportunities, strengths. Dangers: what's holding them back from achieving their goals? Opportunities: what's out there that they can be exploiting or leveraging or using to achieve their goals? And S's: strengths or superpowers. What can you build on? If you know what their goals are and what dangers to eliminate, what opportunities to exploit, and what strengths to leverage, you have solved their DOS. They're going to be your best friends. They're going to go to whatever law firm you want them to go to, and they're going to be your best friends and their best friends. Final step is yield. This is where you're getting paid over time. This is where you are getting reports either monthly or quarterly and making sure that you're getting paid what you're supposed to be getting paid. That's Win Today. That's our process. We love it. All right. I know that it is the top of the hour. Just bear with me, folks. This is obviously very important. This is the rule everyone has to follow when they are transferring their firm to another firm. Okay. So, one question: well, what if I'm just joining another firm as of counsel? To the extent that it counts as a transition of an entire practice over to another firm, follow these rules. Okay. Um, uh, Acquirer cannot purchase your firm in order to then flip it. That is not allowed. Goodwill basically means that you now can in Ohio. You couldn't sell goodwill. You guys are mostly goodwill relationships, right? That's what you're transferring. Um, Now you can do it. Back in the day, you couldn't do it. And in Ohio, you must transfer the entire practice, not just parts of it, the entire practice. The exception is if there's a conflict between acquiring firm and any part of your, or any clients or part of your firm, those can be split off because of a conflict of interest exception. NDAs are required. You can't disclose anything about your clients until there's an NDA. And even then, it's only as necessary without unnecessarily violating the attorney-client privilege. There are specific language requirements in the purchase agreement specific notice requirements as well. What you say, how you say it, who you deliver it to. You cannot release yourself or negotiate a release or indemnification from your own negligence, professional malpractice. These are those technical notice requirements. Those five things must go into your notices. Delivery has to occur to the last known address. Um, and this obligation is shared by buyer and seller. We kind of talked about this already. Preliminary discussions can occur, but the moment confidential information must be disclosed or is disclosed, it must be in an NDA. Pursuant to an NDA, until then, you have to time out. You have to structure the timing of disclosures and need to know. Okay. Um, Kind of covered these already. Everything is pretty much negotiable. These are non-negotiable things. Any pending matters, you can't change the fee. If there's an existing engagement letter, an existing fee agreement that governs the relationship, new engagement letters can be signed and will be signed and should be signed, but should not be mid engagement or mid matter. And competence obviously is an ongoing obligation. Okay, that was fast at the end there. Sorry, folks. Okay, look, this QR code. If you don't have the um, two tools that we talked about here, you can get them here. There's also like an exit readiness survey there, and there's a great ebook that you should read. And then, folks, let us know if I delivered on my promise to you at the beginning, right? If you didn't get the practical value and the clarity and confidence that I said you must, I want you to call me and I'm going to talk you through your transition until you do get that value, clarity, and confidence. This is me. This is how you can get a hold of me. Um, Feel free. Dominica, I don't know if you're able to keep this line open. It's 4 minutes past. I'm sorry about that. Wow, shockingly, all of you are still here. I'm not seeing the numbers drop. So either you're sleeping or finding this interesting. Uh, Dominica, I'm happy to stay on to answer questions. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Alex. It's amazing how much you've covered in the hour. I know we could go on. Yeah, I mean, we can keep this open if anyone has any questions. I did drop the CLE survey in the chat in case you do need to leave. I will also email the survey along with the materials again in case you all missed it. But for now, you're getting words of praise and thanks, Alex. Thank you. And I'll be sure to also copy Alex on the email that I'll send to everyone so you guys can easily reach out to him with any questions. Uh, but yeah, I don't see any more questions that came
There's
in.
there's one that I didn't get to. So
Sure.
here's one. Where can I go to find solos or small firms that are looking for a buyer or transition partner? Great question. So there's a couple places, right? So first off, this also goes back to, and I know this sounds like a plug. It's not intended to be at all. I swear. But work with an intermediary because they've got that reach. So who works with solos and small firms with owners who are looking to exit? Brokers, CPAs, financial advisors, insurance agents, recruiters. Who do you know that I just mentioned? Reach out to them, tell them you want to acquire a solo or small firm, who in their network is retiring. If you work with specifically a law firm, broker, or growth strategist like Exit Path, they already have that bench. There are also websites out there like Biz Buy Sell, Law Practice Exchange is one. Um, I think there are, I think those are two of the ones that come to mind. There might be a few others, but people definitely post their firms for sale. You just have to know that when someone posts something up there, there's already a bunch of bidders. They're already getting phone calls. So off market is better than on market, and warm introductions are better than cold introductions as a general matter. But that's where I would go. Hopefully that answers the question. Okay, next, materials sent after this. Yes, they would. Well, Dominica, I think you said, well, how are they able to access the materials, Dominica?
They were emailed previously, and they're also going to be in the follow-up email with the survey that is required to get credit.
Awesome. Um, Folks, any other questions that I can answer? Anything I missed? All right. Good stuff. Well, folks,
Alex? Go ahead. Sorry. I was just gonna thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I'm looking at the right place. There's the webinar chat. You don't have like a separate Q&A, right? Uh,
Right, the Q&A is empty for now.
okay.
But again, everyone, I will include Alex's email on the email that I will send, but it's also in the materials that you will receive. So don't hesitate to reach out to Alex. You're the best. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. This was a great presentation. Everyone, let us know what you thought, what you'd like to see next in this subject matter. Would love to hear from you, and we'll share with Alex so he can